Who are Arma Armatura? Where do they come from? What do they drink? Do they have cool ships? How about their mechs? Are they a faction or a military contractor? What happened to their homeworld? Maybe we should really be asking, who are the MRC or the Meshan Reprisal Coalition? What is their objective? Are they a ruthless rebellion or a righteous movement? What are their ties to the Luddic path? Who is Dawn given to God, really? You may have heard rumors about Arma Armatura, or maybe it's your first time. Together, we'll be taking a closer look at what is quickly becoming the most adrenaline-filled Starsector Mecha mod ever made. This video is quite vast in scale, so I've sectioned out each topic for your viewing pleasure. So sit back, strap yourself in, and prepare to launch.
In faith, we find strength. In the stars, we find purpose.
Arma Armatura is being developed by Shoi, or the Cabbage Man. Originally posted to the Starsector forum on June 25th, 2020, Arma Armatura has seen significant development since its initial release, now including a star system, storyline, as well as several secrets to discover. Taking a glance at the credits section, it's easy to recognize many of the Starsector modding community's most talented, who have helped sculpt the mod into what it is today. As for what brought Arma Armatura into being, Shoi's initial playtime of Starsector, much like my own and other veteran Starsector players, included many hours with the granddaddy of Starsector mods, Diablo Avionics. A direct inspiration from the Front Mission series of mech games, Shoi was infatuated with the Wanzer implementation instead of traditional Starsector fighters. With incredible admiration for both Flash Frozen and Tartiflet, Shoi did find it odd that there were no mechs you could pilot within Diablo. With the desire for both a playable fighter class and mech in Starsector, Shoi killed two birds with one stone by creating the first iteration of Arma Armatura, which at the time was just the Einhander mech. Satisfied with the implementation, but not with a singular mech, the Cabbage Man continued the mod's development, focusing on the smaller ship weight classes of Starsector, with an emphasis on mechs. While mechs and mecha are not inherently part of Starsector's lore, well, to be fair, special attention has been paid to carefully implement them in a way that blends with the vanilla game, be it aesthetically and functionally. And speaking of blending, let's take a look at the lore. Arma Armatura's history within the Persian sector was relatively straightforward, up until the collapse. A mega corporation that once rivaled the titans of domain industry, developing autonomous cargo platforms, powered exosuits, work drones, and what they are most known for, piloted combat mechs. Designed for rapid deployment and close-quarter engagements, these mecha were sold throughout the sector to both mercenary companies and major factions. Content in being a mostly neutral military contractor, things were peaceful for a time. Then, everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked, or something like that. I guess it was more of an Alderaan situation. During the first AI war, somebody deployed a planet killer to Meshan, the homeworld and headquarters of Arma Armatura, crippling their industrial power, killing most of their employees, and tearing the planet asunder. The new headquarters of Arma Armatura now resides on the appropriately named planet, New Meshan. And where might these planets be located? Arma Armatura can be found within the binary star system of Gamlen, with stars Gamlen and Sautome. These names originate from Gamlen Kizaki, a Diamond Force pilot in the series Macross 7, as well as Alto Sautome, the main protagonist of Macross Frontier, and is how I quickly identified a man of culture. Speaking of culture, within the Gamlen system, there are 3 primary planets and stations you can interact with. To understand the culture of these planets and stations, however, we need to understand where we are in the sector. In the southwestern corner of the core worlds, the Gamlen system shares a border with the Luddic church, lying within the Cathedral Nebula and on the outskirts of the Pilgrim's Path. Being adjacent to church space, you can find Ludic faithful amongst the citizens of New Meshan. Departing from the authoritarian ideology of the church, however, these citizens seek to pursue their faith on their own terms, which really means freely engaging in the hedonistic culture surrounding them.
I'm looking forward to sharing a round of drinks with you all.
So when a Ludic faithful, corpo, and mercenary walk into a bar, you're probably on New Meshan, and is where you can find Serapha, Cade Lennox, and Dawn Given to God. As for the other, less civilized planet, we have Genius. While not meeting the same cataclysmic fate as Meshan, it's not exactly thriving either. The once prosperous colony on the jungle planet had most of its key infrastructure destroyed during the first AI war, leaving the planet and its inhabitants isolated from the rest of the sector. Without proper long-range communication and leadership, the planet has fallen into disarray, becoming a lawless haven for the sector's less savory population. An unusual amount of automated drones, however, are still active around Genius, indicating that there may be more to the planet than meets the eye. And lastly, we have Fort Exodal. Located in orbit around Meshan, Fort Exodal is officially lawless and, as Serapha describes, crowded with every flavor of opportunist. These resourceful opportunists managed to build a colony around an ancient expansion-era spore ship, creating a formidable station that serves as both a habitat and a base of operations. While it might seem like Fort Exodal stays in orbit through the sheer force of anger alone, that binding anger is what formed what is now known as the Meshan Reprisal Coalition. The MRC is comprised of veterans, descendants of those who survived Meshan, and other universally angry people. And this is where an interesting contrast in ideology can really be seen. Arma Armatura, being the corporate entity that it is, might be able to expense Meshan as a total loss and move on. The MRC, however, remembers. They do not forgive, and they do not forget. They want answers, and they want whoever was responsible for the destruction of their homeworld to suffer, as they have. Therefore, the MRC possesses a deep hatred of the hegemony, Syndrian Dictat, and especially Tritachyon, one of whom they believe is responsible for the planet killer. Being the rebellious faction that it is, the MRC is allied with the Pirates and Ludic Path. And this is where things get interesting. You see, when you go to the Starsector Mod Index, you can find Arma Armatura, not under faction mods, but under content expansions. Now, the description for content expansions is, these mods add new content to existing factions, which is partially correct, but given what is contained within Arma Armatura, it might even fit into the Mega Mod category. Because despite the mod's name being Arma Armatura, it's not a faction mod because Arma Armatura is not a faction. And you're probably like, what? So just focus for a second. New Meshan is under independent rule as part of a monarchy. That being said, Arma Armatura has significant influence as the dominant corporate entity and as employees that sit on the Royal Advisory Council. They also have a dedicated market on New Meshan for purchasing their hardware. Now, the MRC is a faction, and while they don't have the same influence as major factions, they are quite active in the sector. Arma Armatura is sympathetic to the MRC's cause, given that neither enjoy their shared homeworld in multiple pieces. And while Arma Armatura can't officially endorse the MRC for diplomatic reasons, they can use them as a proxy, supplying the MRC with mecha and using them to test their latest designs. You'll hear me use the terms mech and mecha. While quite similar in their classification of vehicle, there are some key differences. At their core, mechs and mecha are human-piloted robots that are generally humanoid in appearance, having arms, legs, and sometimes a head. To be clear, these are not legal definitions by any means, these are my personal definitions. Mechs are ground-based machines that can be used in a variety of applications, although are generally seen in combat variants. Key attributes of mechs are being low-tech in nature, with only the pilot having direct control of the mech. Additionally, a key component is mechs use their legs as legs, putting one foot in front of the other to move around. You'll see why this is important in a minute. Smaller mechs appear in games such as Helldivers 2, stomping around in Combined Arms Warfare, while larger mechs appear in series like Mech Warrior, standing several stories tall, and some having the combat power to eliminate an entire army on their own. Mechs are arguably present within vanilla Starsector lore, being represented in the Heavy Armaments item, which was updated from a weapons rack to an item that certainly resembles a mech. Given this assumption, the Nexerolin mod additionally allows heavy armaments to be used in ground-based operations. Mechs for everyone! However, given that ground combat is merely simulated, the scale of these mechs is unknown. Mecha, on the other hand, are the high-tech equivalent of mechs, extremely maneuverable and capable of ground, air, and space combat. Due to their high-tech nature, there is often a neural synchronization requirement to operate such a machine. Being as fast as they are, mecha often use jet-powered surface gliding as a means to move around on the ground, which closely resembles ice skating. This is best represented in games like Armored Core and Mecha Break. Now, of course, there are plenty of exceptions and other special cases, like Titanfall, where Titans are ground-based mechs but use neural synchronization and an embedded AI core to pilot the mech independently.
Welcome back, pilot. I've missed you.
I will never get tired of hearing that. Arma Armatura focuses specifically on playable mecha, being heavily inspired by series such as Macross, one of the original mecha anime alongside Gundam. Given that the predominant inspiration behind this mod is an old-school anime, it's best we talk about the art. The illustrations and art direction within Arma Armatura do an excellent job setting the tone of the mod, displaying that while things are improving within the Gamlen system, the daily struggles of the people are quite real. But there's a far more important topic that I do want to cover. Upon downloading the mod, you might be surprised to find two folders contained within the zip file. One of these folders is the main mod, while the additional folder is the anime portrait pack. You can choose to simply install the main mod or add the extra mod for the anime portraits. So, which way, Starfarer? Do you play the mod as designed by the mod maker, or do you succumb to your degenerate desires and install that which hath tempted so many? The choice should be obvious, and yet I couldn't help but wonder, why are there two sets of portraits? Why are there significantly more anime portraits? When I asked Shoi these questions, the answer was quite shocking. He explained to me that the anime portraits are actually the original portraits for the mod. The current set of portraits contained within the base folder are alternative portraits he created to adhere to a more vanilla style. The reason for which, in his own words, was that some people are extremely anti-anime and complained, which is oh boy. After having dealt with such people in the Starsector community, Dawn, how do you feel?
Hate? I don't hate them. I just don't care they exist.
Well said. In fact, before making this life-changing decision, let's hear from an industry professional. Shroud, what's your opinion?
I want in on the weeb community. I do. I want to be a weeb.
Is this our calling?
Hi, dude. I don't know what it is. I've just like think about over the years, weebs, right? Over the years, they've been like the nicest people. Their communities have been hype. They've been active. I want to be a weeb.
Couldn't have said it better myself, and so we'll be playing Arma Armatura with the anime portrait pack, as Lud intended. I recommend doing the same. The anime portrait pack contains how the faction is meant to be portrayed, including the entire MRC lineup. They're high quality and have excellent style, but to each their own. Do you prefer Helmet Guy or Shyla Bag? And just to make sure this is understood, the anime portrait pack is to be installed alongside Arma Armatura and is enabled as a separate mod. Do not try to place the portrait pack into the main folder. It makes mustard gas. When it comes to the song selection of Arma Armatura, it hits the mecha fantasy just right. Chill lo-fi music in the markets, and high tempo, high intensity music for combat. Let's give it a quick listen. for those responsible for such a bangin' soundtrack, Unbridled Hate is by Bonesaw, who is certainly well known for the intensity in their music. Every other track contained within Arma Armatura is by Maritumix, whose style very naturally matches up with the mecha vibes. An excellent soundtrack with even more tracks to discover within the mod. And it's time we discover the true inspiration behind the mod, the Mecha. The fleet doctrine of Arma Armatura consists of mecha, bigger mecha, and carriers to carry more mecha. The smallest class of vessel being the cataphract, which are classed as frigates in Starsector terms. These mecha follow different rules than your typical frigate, however. Cataphracts are described as multi-purpose war machines, combining land and space combat capabilities. Since they can be used in ground combat, they not only boost the effectiveness of ground operations, but also can be deployed in special cataphract strikes using Nexarelin. When using the cataphract strike ability, only one cataphract may be chosen. That cataphract will then be deployed via assault pod into ground combat. Cataphracts will take significant combat readiness and armor damage when used in a strike. The value they provide, however, is immense. A surgical cataphract strike can knock out key facilities. For example, disabling the orbital defenses of a planet can make an invasion significantly easier. Compared to regular-sized frigates, cataphracts are small, fragile, and piloted solo, and therefore cannot mount large modifications. Having a small profile, however, has its benefits. Cataphracts possess the special Strikecraft Hull Mod. This hull mod essentially changes the vessel into a fighter, letting it pass over ship hulls and shoot over allies, granting it greater flexibility in the field. Because cataphracts are too small to operate independently, they require a carrier when deployed for extended combat. And you might think, a frigate that requires a carrier? But that's the neat part. They can actually land on carriers.
I'm so glad you're back.
By pressing U, autopilot and docking mode is enabled. When docked at a carrier, a cataphract can restore their PPT, ammo, armor, and hull. You may not like it, but PPT stands for Peak Performance Time, meaning that cataphracts may fight continuously and fully refresh their combat capability, as long as carrier support is available. This mechanic is just plain cool, and I'm amazed at how seamlessly it works. In the midst of a prolonged battle, I was especially surprised to find I could land on an allied carrier. And quality of life is something worth protecting, like the carrier you are docked at. If necessary, you can undock from a carrier early. This interrupts the repair process and gives you a chance to heroically fight and defend what otherwise may have been a doomed vessel. Speaking of doomed vessel, Arma Armatura does let you pilot actual fighters such as the Xiphos. While it is fun to fly around as a fighter, you'll quickly find that the average life of a fighter pilot in the Persian sector, well, it's a little rough. Moving on to slightly larger vessels, we have the Garega, which I want to highlight for lore reasons. You see, the Garega was Arma Armatura's first foray into making larger combat mechs that were dedicated to space combat. While discarding the ground combat capability of a cataphract, they were able to mount a larger power core and ship-grade weaponry onto the mech. The result? A far sturdier frame that is capable of superior damage output. Now, the Garega was designed with the Silver Sword targeting interface, which was intended to be operated by both a human pilot and an allegedly Delta-level AI core, in tandem. To operate, a semi-invasive link is established between the pilot, the AI core, and the machine itself. However, sustained use of this system resulted in catastrophic brain damage in 96% of trial runs. This was due to the pilot's mental bandwidth being exceeded by the amount of information being fed through it. So, did Arma Armatura increase the level of the AI core to relieve the mental strain? No, because that's illegal. So instead, they came to the conclusion that they needed more mental bandwidth. Here's how we're going to explain this. Imagine that each stick of RAM in your PC is only 1 GB. You're going to need quite a few sticks to run Starsector. Got a solid mental picture of how many you need for your mod list? Good. Now those sticks of RAM, they aren't going into your PC, they're going into a mech. And they're not sticks of RAM, they're people, all of whom are going to be plugged into the same neural interface to share the mental burden. They literally have no other purpose as crew members. This is the case aboard every Arma Armatura mech that is larger than a cataphract. And with that, let's talk about the destroyers. The destroyer class mechs of Arma Armatura fill the heavy fire support role within the fleet. With large weaponry mounted to either arm, they are a relatively slow but powerful force on the field. While able to deal considerable damage on their own, several of these larger mechs can assist nearby friendly vessels. The Watchdog, for example, can use its Guardian Protocol ability to boost the defensive properties of friendlies within a large radius. This ability also extends to fightercraft and cataphracts. When used optimally, this ability turns the mech into a lightning rod, which is actually pretty great. Yeah, it's good. If you're more of a high-tech captain, the Altigrave class does not disappoint, able to cover their fleet from missiles and fighters while pushing the front line. While larger mechs are fun to use on their own, they shine most when combined with a cataphract group, able to layer their fire, use their supportive abilities, and sling heavy ordnance while cataphracts overwhelm enemy defenses. It's not a traditional vanilla playstyle by any means, where one commits their fleet to either ranged bombardment or a safety override blitz. It's a unique playstyle where the Destroyer class mechs serve as bastions for the smaller attack elements, making a hybrid assault force that is incredibly satisfying to use. And what makes it all possible? The carriers. Arma Armatura carriers occupy a critical role, being the very foundation of the Mecha Fleet Doctrine. These carriers are designed to maintain a strong front line of cataphracts and assist in various ways. Take the Fenris, a staple amongst Arma Armatura fleets. While not a frontline combatant by any means, it has a very important ship system. Given how fragile cataphracts are, it's very easy to make a wrong move, and when perched at the very precipice of oblivion, that's when the Fenris pulls you out of the abyss.
Oh, damn, my goose was almost cooked. Thanks for the cover, honey buns.
You can thank me later. Got a CO1 permit ready.
Sweet liberty.
The Fenris can recall cataphracts, and it's not an automatic ability, it's manually triggered, meaning that when I get an emergency recall from a Fenris, I know they have my back. From my experience, they're more reliable than online teammates, and it well, it feels good. And since we're feeling good, how about those capitals? Well, that's the neat part. There aren't any. If we take a closer look at the ship preview, the largest vessels within Arma Armatura are the carriers, which are classed as cruisers. The lack of any capital might come as a surprise, but if you really lean into the mecha playstyle, trust me, you won't need them. WINGCOM. WINGCOM is a hull mod, but it's not just a hull mod. It's an entire expansion to the Starsector carrier and fightercraft system, establishing an ace fighter squadron that gains skills over time. These pilots have names, call signs, portraits, and personalities. For those that enjoy having wingmen at their side, this is what dreams are made of. After equipping WINGCOM to a carrier, you can find the WINGCOM management screen under the Intel menu. This includes an info page on the mechanics of WINGCOM, as well as the main squadron management page. Here you can customize the squadron under each of your officers, including the squadron name, call sign of each pilot, and even their portrait. Something I really appreciate about WINGCOM is that gameplay-wise, it doesn't require any micromanagement. You could just slap the whole mod on and call it a day. The pilots will automatically gain skills over time, and the amount of pilots automatically adjusts to the amount of wings deployed by the carrier. The squadron also follows the officer, meaning that you can freely move the officer to a different vessel and keep the same squadron intact as long as the WINGCOM whole mod is present. When it comes to progression, a squadron's solidarity is its overall cohesiveness. The higher the solidarity, the greater the bonus to the entire squadron. A wing getting knocked out in combat lowers solidarity, while winning battles increases it. Over time, you can build an elite fighter squadron and promote pilots into ship officers, should you so desire. WINGCOM is typically installed on carriers, although some weaker cataphracts and wings come with it built in, so if you want to live out the fighter pilot and grunt mecha fantasy, you can. Now, Shoi, being a cultured individual, found the inspiration for WINGCOM from Wing Commander, as well as the Ace Combat series. And I have to say, its implementation into Starsector is brilliant. The satisfaction of a squadron, wingmen that have your back and grow alongside you. It's something I didn't know I needed, and at this point, I can't imagine playing without it. Pilots react to things around them and their banter is influenced by their personality type. And throughout this video, you can spot some pretty good lines. So, whether you tragically lose a wingmate to a giant rail cannon, or you all live to fly another day, WINGCOM adds an extra layer of life to Starsector.
I've got plans for a cold beer, and some good company once this battle's done.
And speaking of good company, we've got weapons. The weapon loadouts within Arma Armatura are a bit different than traditional Starsector vessels, as amongst cataphracts and other mechs, a majority of the weapon systems are built in. However, as is mandatory in any mech game, there are a number of weapons to customize your mechs with. And I also want to highlight the incredible detail within each of these mechs, using advanced techniques like armor layering to make them look and feel like proper space mecha. Take the Lanos for example, an amazingly detailed cataphract with customizable built-in arm weapons. This cataphract however is special, as it can mount a medium-sized weapon in its chest. Now this looks rather silly on the refit page as the weapon appears to cover the entire cataphract. Rest assured this is for clarity, as changing the weapon loadout can be a little tricky when the cataphracts are so small. When deployed into battle however, the chest weapon is hidden. That is until it fires. An animated chest plate which slides up to reveal the weapon underneath. Now, animated ships are a rare sight in Starsector, and it's incredibly rare, if not unheard of, to see such detail in something so small. And this chapter is just getting started. The legs. The mechs have animated legs. Whether you are moving forward or backward, there they are. This also applies to several of the Destroyer class mechs, and the detail keeps going. The Zanuck mech has articulating thrusters to show its heightened mobility over other heavy mechs. Whatever weapon you slot into the heavy mech mounts, they actually fire from the guns. And if you happen to mount a missile into those slots, the missile is loaded onto the tip of the barrel. This one is interesting because it might not seem like much, but in all my time playing Starsector, I have never seen a detail like that. The Einhander mech braces its gun when it uses assault mode. The assault mode then charges its primary weapon with energy, changing the weapon effect. And it's these kind of details that give a mod soul. Details that the developers didn't need to add, but they did. The qualities that elevate a mod to legendary status. And this wouldn't be a legendary mecha mod without the classic mecha weapons. Weapons like the Harpoon, which when attached to the hull, not only pulls the two ships together, but sends constant EMP arcs into the target. When mastered, you can use it to slingshot yourself around an enemy ship. The Pile Bunker, a true mecha classic, while difficult to see, embeds these pink explosive charges into the hull of a ship. The Boost Knuckle, also known as I Cast Burst, a unique kinetic missile that punches its target and returns to the caster. Boost Knuckle is one of the single most complex weapons in Arma Armatura, and all of modded Starsector. While its presentation is impressive, the underlying system is pure, unfiltered, black magic. And of course, the energy sword. If I know anything about mecha, it's that swords are mandatory. You might think it hard to get within melee range in Starsector, but the reality is cataphracts can do it quite easily. While the swords take some getting used to, they become incredibly fun and powerful weapons once mastered. Swords may be fitted to both select cataphracts and destroyer class mechs, and out of all the weapons in Arma Armatura, it's one of my favorites. And as fun as it'd be to show a giant montage of me chopping up enemies and yeeting myself at them like meow, we've got 3 traditional Armatura weapons we need to cover. First, the Ion Buster, a small energy weapon that compares to the vanilla ion cannon. The Buster however reduces its rate of fire to pack one hell of an EMP punch in a single shot. Ideal for hit and run attacks, the Ion Buster is the only mountable small weapon from Armatura and pairs excellently with cataphracts. In a similar fashion to the Ion Buster, the Juno compares to the vanilla Graviton Beam. It trades in the constant kinetic pressure for a burst of damage, and is the sole mountable medium weapon offered by Armatura. It's easily identifiable by the weapon effect and the accompanying sound it makes when it fires. As for the final weapon, we have a large missile, but this isn't a nuke that blows up half the enemy fleet in one torpedo. What we have is a weapon unlike anything I've ever seen in Starsector. Remember how it felt to use an angry mob in Command and Conquer Generals? Remember how it felt to lead a horde that could take down any foe in Pikmin? Remember how it felt to finally field illegal parts in Custom Robo? Oh yeah, it's all coming together. The Assault Pod, a weapon that's so fun to use, it's illegal. And I don't think I have to explain why that is. In fact, I now have a decent understanding as to why Meshan received a Planet Killer. This weapon is so illegal, it's impossible to buy on any market. There are, however, designated suspicious-looking individuals who sell these highly illegal products in custom orders, and is also how you acquire other rare Armatura ships, like the Cayman Carrier, which comes with an assault pod built in.
Look up in the sky! It's a bird!
It's a plane! It is a plane! And the plane is carrying Dr. Bees! Just your average wasp-themed superhero. What's this? A handsome family picnic woefully underpopulated by bees? A large influx of bees ought to put a stop to that. Oh, Lord!
I just wish he knew.
Dr. Bees!
While it's easy to assume the assault pod is merely a bee dispenser, it actually has a rather complex mechanic that isn't explained, and that's the boarding mechanic. Each drone has a % chance to board an enemy ship and attack it internally, which allows them to do a certain amount of damage that bypasses shields. Let's take a closer look. The first number is the defense score and is the amount of defending crew multiplied by the hull condition of the ship and modified by whether the shields are up or down. Shields up gives a 50% bonus to the defense. The second number is the attack score and is each drone on board multiplied by 5. If the attack score is higher than the defense score, the drones will do a certain amount of damage to a random part of the ship. Early versions of the assault pod could have the drones completely take over an enemy vessel and transfer the ship to player command mid-combat. However, due to the amount of compatibility and other issues it caused, was later removed. Now, I have to give credit to Shoi and everyone who contributed to the assault pod, because to put this in perspective, this team developed an entire boarding mechanic for one weapon, and that is the kind of dedication I love to see. And what better way to mount unique weapons than unique ships? The Guar Duel, or GD-42, a mecha fighter hybrid, able to transform between the two modes at will. Equipped with the experimental Percept system, which adapts to the strike craft's current configuration. In mecha form, it deploys a heavy energy orb that emits EMP arcs, while in fighter form, it deploys seeking energy bolts. The Guar Duel frame supports an experimental flux adaptive cascade emitter, increasing the damage of the Percept system as the craft nears overload capacity. Insanely dangerous and insanely fun. While in mecha form, the craft boasts superior durability, maneuverability, and grants access to the small hybrid-mounted weapon. The fighter form, by contrast, is far less maneuverable, but possesses superior top speed and grants access to the two small missile mounts, excellent for the pursuit of fleeing enemies, burst damage, and repositioning in combat. The Guar Duo is highly experimental and is a one-of-a-kind ship in the sector. You might think such a unique ship is the ultimate trophy of Arma Armatura, and yet, it is but one of many to acquire. Like the unique Aleste, unlike the far more common S2 variant which features a balanced loadout, the original Aleste class cataphract was built with a sword on each arm and a chest-mounted harpoon, which at first I doubted. Who brings two swords and a harpoon to a spaceship brawl? But after several bottles of champagne and an amount of other beverages, they told me I shouldn't fly, for I must be seeing double, to which I assured them, I have two swords, one for each of you.
Saber blade.
Hunting down the already impressive array of influences amongst the Armatura arsenal, the Aleste received its name from the Aleste series of shoot-'em-up games. And if you enjoy hunting down difficult bounty fleets to acquire especially powerful ships, you'll be pleased to know Armatura features several bounty missions to acquire such prizes. Like the Hell Corsair, an extremely powerful automated mech with some curious abilities. If its eyes lock onto you, it'll actually spin your ship, making it quite difficult to land a clean shot. That and some interesting shield coverage. Now, you might be wondering why there appears to be an automated ship made by Arma Armatura. Well, let's just say the lore goes a bit deeper when it comes to who Armatura does business with. Expanding upon that lore, there are several extremely powerful mech variants that Armatura has developed secretly, the kind of classified mechs that don't show up on the official ship roster. So, make sure to check that Magic Lib bounty board. And good hunting. As for our next ship, it might not be at the same power level, and yet it's too interesting not to include the Backraid Mobile Armor, a compound unit housing a Panther-class phase cataphract within. Multi-part ships are always interesting, and refitting them can be a challenging experience, but the Backraid is special. These are not merely two pieces of one ship. They are a combat unit, working in tandem. Once missiles are spent, the armor may be purged in the field to free the cataphract, at which point it'll automatically retreat, and the cataphract may continue fighting, which under normal circumstances is how it works, until I tried a few things, experimenting with some ship builds, and it's gone, which I was rather sad about until it came back. Who's a good Backraid? Who's a good boy? I don't care if this is unintended behavior, it makes me happy. Now, is the Backraid a reference to some shoot-'em-up game? Yes. Yes, it is. Now who wants to go for a walk? The Morgana, the time dilation go fighter. The Morgana is based off the experimental Morgan fighter from the Ace Combat series. While only armed with light weaponry, it can effectively turn Starsector into a bullet-hell game, able to dance between an enemy fleet with ease. Zooming around with insane time dilation is awesome until you start to feel it. No. Not again. Not again. No. As for our last mech, you may have heard of it before, rumored to be the strongest mech in the Arma Armatura fleet. Is it on screen right now? Is it invisible? Or can you just not see it?
And his name is John C.
Introducing the Rajanya, a melee-focused destroyer-class mech with a design only a true Gundam fan could recognize. The Rajanya has a choice between two melee weapons, the Ultra Pulverizer, a weapon designed to smash. As you can see, its primary role is, the second weapon is the Power Axe, which has the ability to cleave off chunks of an enemy ship and assimilate those parts into the Rajanya, effectively rebuilding its own hull and armor. For a destroyer-class mech that needs to get into melee range to deal damage, the Power Axe becomes essential to keeping the Rajanya in the fight. Defensively, the Rajanya is equipped with point defense drones, as well as 4 pauldrons, each with their own shield emitter, a sturdy bastion given they aren't destroyed in combat, an extremely aggressive line breaker. The Rajanya excels at disrupting enemy formations, allowing an easier assault by smaller attack elements. Having an affinity for axe-wielding mecha, the Rajanya hits just right. What's better though is that it's the perfect fit for a cybernetically augmented reckless officer, where charging straight into an enemy fleet is the tactically savvy move. Make no mistake, the Rajanya is a destroyer-class vessel, but projects a capital-sized aura. And how does one acquire the Rajanya? A great deal of these special mechs are acquired through bounties. To acquire the rest, however, we'll need to take a trip to New Meshan. Mercenary culture thrives within Armatura. As such, promising contractors may be invited for certain opportunities, or as Serapha puts it, initiatives. Serapha represents Armatura's corporate interests, and at the forefront of those interests is the Aegis Tactical Assessment Corps, or ATAC, a development program that puts fleet captains alongside pilots, analysts, and engineers to test prototypes in live combat scenarios. Accepting the invitation grants access to the ATAC Combat Analysis Event Track, where participating operatives earn evaluation points by using Arma Armatura hardware in combat. The ATAC is a simple, effective, and delightfully thematic implementation of the event system, where you can feel the joy of testing prototype equipment and Armatura's development progress as a company. After some initial observation from the ATAC, you'll begin to receive experimental hull mods, such as the C-Stim Dispatcher, an incredibly powerful hull mod for Strikecraft. By narrowly evading projectiles with shields lowered, the dispatcher administers a high-grade synthetic stimulant, increasing time dilation by 200% for a short time. For being as powerful as it is, the whole mod comes with a significant economic trade-off. The C-Stim requires 3 units of recreational drugs per deployment, and that's per whole mod installation, which adds up quite quickly if using a lot of cataphracts. The benefits, however, cannot be understated. The whole mod is especially powerful on cataphracts like the Lanos, which inherently does not have shields. Now, are there consequences to, overdoing it on stims?
Let's go to the top.
By progressing the ATAC track, you can look forward to other powerful hull mods, enduring buffs to strike craft, and prototype ships, representing a key feature in unlocking Armatura gear across your sector-spanning exploits, and the Gamlen frontier. And when it comes to your adventures in the Gamlen system, it's important to choose the right start. While not actually required to play Armatura, I highly recommend having Nexarelon installed. By doing so, you'll have access to the Arma Armatura and MRC Campaign starts. While the Arma Armatura start grants access to a fleet of mechs in the Gamlen system, it's actually not the start we're looking for. For the full Armatura experience and to play the mod as intended, we'll be choosing the special MRC start. While it's designated as a hard campaign, that difficulty only applies to the first encounter, which we'll cover. In a nutshell, you'll be playing as an Arma Armatura veteran who fought in the first AI war. Meshan has fallen, AI is running rampant, and your only hope of survival is to seal yourself and the surviving crew in cryosleep. 111 years later, Cycle 205, you awaken. Unknown contacts are approaching. Combat is imminent. You are assigned to the Valkhazard, and as the only qualified pilot, you're getting in the mech, Shinji. Because this campaign assumes you know what you're doing, I'm going to give you some advice on what to do in your first second of gameplay. Because as soon as you load in, that's exactly how much time you have before the Tritachyon security patrol smacks you. So we're going to pause the game, go to the abandoned research station where we've been hiding in cryosleep, and grab the Aleste mech that's chilling inside. And yes, this is the double sword Aleste, and is going to make this fight slightly easier. All that's left is to refit your mecha, tell Tritachyon they can't hippity-hoppity your property, and crack open a can.
Welcome back, pilot. The controls are yours.
This fight is not easy. In fact, the Aleste likely won't survive without some clever orders. Technically, in the current version of the mod, you can lose this fight and still progress the storyline. That, however, would mean giving up the Valkhazard and the unique Aleste, which is unacceptable. Therefore, no matter how painful, you will win this fight. I believe in you. The default loadout with machine gun and laser works quite well, and really there's no need to alter it. In a subsequent playthrough, I did try using the chain gun and sword combo, which I would not recommend for this fight, but as an old friend used to say,
You kill me, you're better. I kill you, I'm better.
Oi. Fair enough.
the difficulty for this campaign is front-loaded, and I can understand how some might see it as unfair. But if you can make it through this fight, you're gonna have a great time. Once you're done picking up the pieces and gathering your crew, it's off to New Meshan. As for getting in contact with Serapha, compared to what you just had to do, it's rather easy, as one does not simply waltz into New Meshan with a Valkhazard without being noticed. Immediately upon landing, you are given an invitation to meet with Lady Fa, and it is in your best interest to do so. You see, Serapha has big plans, and you happen to fit into those plans better than she anticipated. You are a veteran of the AI wars, when Armatura was in its prime, showing up out of nowhere with a Valkhazard, one of the most powerful cataphracts ever developed, and a design Armatura lacks the resources to build in the current cycle. You are a symbol, and Serapha has an eye for potential, and what she sees is you filling the void in the MRC's leadership. Like an essential piece in Fa's game of sector chess, you are positioned perfectly to make things move in the Gamlen system, and this is where the Arma Armatura storyline begins. If not following the MRC campaign, however, your path to this point will be different. If arriving on New Meshan as an independent or otherwise affiliated captain, you can instead get in contact with the wonderful individual known as Dawn Given to God, who you can find in her natural habitat, where she keeps herself well hydrated. Dawn is an employee of Armatura, and while she doesn't have a lot of influence within the faction, she is one of the corporation's best pilots. And by doing her low-level missions and raising your standing with both her and Armatura, you can eventually find yourself in contact with Serapha. I still highly recommend following the MRC campaign start if you intend to make Arma Armatura the main focus of your playthrough, given the kickstarted progression, allowing you to jump right into the missions and start making progress on the ATAC track. Now, Dawn is amazing, and I promise we'll come back to her in a bit. So, about that storyline. Fort Exodal actually starts as a pirate stronghold. Once you are given the green light from Serapha, you can introduce yourself to the activists there and build MRC legitimacy, giving them control of the station and establishing their base of operations. Also a great time to sign up for an MRC commission. Might as well get paid to kill Tritachyon. The real fun begins when you go to the new Meshan bar to talk to a charismatic man. This charismatic man is trying to recruit mercenaries for a dangerous mission, which you won't be able to accept until your fleet is of substantial size. A feature I appreciate in two parts, as not only does it make sure you are properly prepared, it also lets you bypass this restriction with a story point. Mr. Charisma has his eyes on Genius, a planet he believes has untold riches buried beneath its surface, wanting to make landfall and bring a little civilization to the planet. He could use some help clearing a path through the suspiciously large defensive drone fleets. This is where the first mission, A Crown of Cinders, begins. Out of courtesy for those who are already convinced and don't want significant storyline spoilers, you can skip to this section of the video, but there's some pretty awesome stuff which I absolutely have to show off, so strap yourself in. Once leaving orbit, you have a choice. Wait for the Planetfall Task Force to make ready at Fort Exodal, or head over to Genius, where the conflict has likely already started. What's neat about this section is that it's not scripted. You can choose to engage the drone fleets as you see fit. There's a lot of them, but also plentiful allied fleets in the area, providing many opportunities to engage in large coordinated battles. Drones aren't the most threatening enemy, but the sheer numbers in which they appear can certainly overwhelm an unprepared fleet. Once in control of the surrounding space, it's time for planetfall. Cade gives the final briefing before the drop, and you'll have a chance to see those you'll be dropping with, including Imelda and Deadeye. I absolutely love these briefing sections as they are incredibly well written and really make you feel like you're part of the mercenary team. There's even custom graphics of your mission target, adding to the overall immersion. Now strap yourself in, we're dropping hot. You'll quickly realize this is not your average Starsector mission, because you are dropping into the atmosphere of Genius. Different rules apply. For starters, you are unable to deploy capitals. On top of that, there's a stacking maneuverability debuff based on ship class. The larger the ship, the more sluggish its movement, which provides an excellent opportunity for frigates and strike craft to weave between enemy vessels. But what's really incredible about these missions is the layering of unique mechanics, like enemies spawning all over the map, custom music, as well as the visual effects that amplify the atmospheric entry experience. Let's take a moment to appreciate it all. These effects kick in at specific times, like entering into lower atmosphere greets you with actual clouds, something unheard of in Starsector. But what I want to bring your attention to now is the background. Did you notice any change? Did you notice the mission target approaching? The amount of detail and layers is just insane. In all my time playing Starsector, I've never seen anything like it. In fact, I didn't even know a lot of this was possible. Once docked at the orbital hangar, we'll get the chance to officially meet Sister Imelda Nessus. Imelda walks the path, and is one of my favorite characters I've ever met in Starsector. How do I put this? If my script sounds like a monkey with a typewriter, which I'm confident it does, everything she says reads like fine poetry. Completing the first section of A Crown of Cinders is how you unlock Cade as an official contact. Throughout these missions, you'll get to know each of the mercenaries and the personalities they bring to the operation. While Imelda embodies the Luddic path, Cade represents the pirate ideology. How you choose to interact with them, however, is up to you. You misunderstand, sister. I too drink the tea. Once Cade gets base camp set up, it's time for part 2. The objective, sending a message. The target, a Ceylon carrier. The altitude, low. I Never thought we'd see the day we got a scrolling background shoot-'em-up mission in Starsector. The presentation might be rough around the edges given that Starsector was never built for such things, but the unique experience is absolutely worth it, and it's amazing to see Starsector modders pushing the game to its very limits. As you push forward, the backdrop shifts to a sprawling cityscape, while the enemies evolve right alongside it. Early waves bring lighter, faster flyers, and later, the city introduces heavier guard units that feel natural given the environment. The progression isn't just visual, it's thematic, smart, and cohesive. Even the smaller elements like the background gently, almost imperceptibly rotating. It might not seem like much, until you realize no one has ever done that before. And let's not forget, for every mission in Arma Armatura, there's custom music. Once the target Ceylon is destroyed and the burning debris smash into the buildings below, you can have an excellent conversation with Cade about collateral damage and the worth of a civilian life. This concludes A Crown of Cinders. With your assistance, things have begun to move in the Gamlen system. Both Cade and Imelda are now stationed on Genius and will no longer be found on New Meshan. Now, there are interesting side missions and bounties to complete for Cade in the meantime, but Cade's primary concern is a rebellion on Genius, given the unstable power dynamic that exists on the planet. As tempting as it might be to level the opposition from orbit, this requires a more personal approach, and is how we start the Descent mission. The objective is to find the cause of said rebellion and put an end to it. Luckily, there's someone who's already done some investigating. The rebels are being supplied from off-world, a piece of information Cade refuses to acknowledge as he believes Genius is the ultimate prize and anything off-world is merely a distraction. Under his command, chasing shadows is a waste of time, but Imelda understands that shadows are where you find the truth. Recovered coordinates point to a subterranean facility on Meshan, containing a secret that was never meant to be released. Does Arma Armatura have lost domain technology waiting to be recovered, or was something kept hidden, sealed away for the safety of mankind? Just when you think you've seen it all, you're thrown into another incredibly impressive mission. In addition to the spectacular visuals, I'm quite impressed with how well balanced these missions actually are, each of them providing sufficient challenge without blindsiding the player. The rules of engagement are well presented, and those relying on capital ships will have a more difficult time. Compared with traditional Starsector space engagements, letting the smaller ship classes shine is a refreshing change of pace. On another point, remember when I said that letting go of the Valk hazard was unacceptable? Well, this is why. Once S-modded and brought up to max power levels, it's impressive how much of a menace you can be. Upon reaching the core of the facility and dispatching salvage teams, Recovery finds data fragments, which once reconstructed, point towards Gravian. Now, Gravian, besides being another mecha anime series, is the local gas giant of the Gamlen system. While there isn't anything perceptible orbiting around Gravian, upon a much closer scan, there seems to be a station hidden within the upper atmosphere. Those of you familiar with gas giants should know that operating within their atmosphere isn't exactly hospitable, which is brilliantly reflected in the environmental effects. And yet, it would certainly protect whatever you are doing from outside interference. The question is, what kind of surreptitious project would require such a setting? And that is exactly what we're here to find out. This mission and the following sequence are absolute Starsector cinema. I've played a lot of Starsector, and I've never seen anything quite like this. The first Starsector mission to ever change my jaw status. The detail is insane, whether it's the shifting background elements, or special music kicking in at just the right time. In addition to being an absolute blast, completing the Descent mission is how you acquire the Valk hazard. Finding yourself amongst the rubble, you might be wondering, where are we? Where is Gravian? Oh, ooh. Of course, to actually finish the mission and storyline, we need to give our report to Cade and Imelda, which goes a little something like this. The Arma Armatura storyline concludes here with the Descent mission. By completing the storyline and otherwise interacting with the Arma Armatura characters is how you can acquire the 3 legendaries, or the 3 most powerful pieces of Armatura equipment. The Valkasser, the single most powerful cataphract, can be acquired by completing the Descent mission. When combined with the MRC start, can result in 2 total. The Rajanya can be acquired by getting to 90 relations with Serapha. The 3rd legendary, and the ship we haven't covered, is the Ceylon, which can be acquired from Cade at 40 relations, and another in a special bounty mission. The Ceylon is an incredibly powerful carrier, but not for its direct combat strength. The Ceylon possesses the AWAC suite, which provides a passive range buff to nearby friendlies and lowers the damage of enemy ships by 20%, which is quite substantial. Its ship system locks onto an enemy vessel, increasing all damage against it by 25%. Combining these various effects, the Ceylon becomes a crucial support element in boosting fleet power, allowing lighter elements like cataphracts to take on capitals and thrive in large-scale engagements. After using the reward ships and experiencing all of the missions, I can confidently say, I love the Armatura storyline. It's got great characters, each with their own distinctive personality and background. The writing is incredibly well done, and probably the best I've seen in any Starsector mod. There's plenty of dialogue options with multiple choices, music that kicks in at specific times, and conversations that switch between several characters. And that's not including the actual combat missions, which are some of the most fun I've ever had playing Starsector. It's cool to see characters moving around and the system actually changing as the storyline progresses. And one of the craziest things about it is, the whole experience feels so big, and yet, it's all contained within the Gamlen system. While the Gamlen system holds many fun adventures, there are a few areas in which Armatura can be improved. When it comes to the missions of Armatura, I absolutely love new ideas being implemented to give a unique player experience. What I realized during my playtime, however, was that the fast-moving backgrounds can cause quite a bit of eye strain when you are actually focused on the combat layer. In normal Starsector combat, the background only shifts slightly and in gentle movement so as to not be a distraction. This is only a minor concern, however, as the overall experience is well worth it. A bigger concern is the unintended behavior of the background when zooming in or out too quickly. By doing so, the background can split in half, revealing the space behind the ground layer. And unfortunately, the ground splitting open is somewhat immersion breaking. I brought this up and Shoi is aware of the issue. What he explained is that the current implementation is the optimized version, as if the texture is consistently streamed to cover up those patches, the mission takes a serious performance hit, especially on lower end machines. Now, this will be getting updated in the near future, but if you do play the current version, try to resist zooming in and out like a crazy person. Now, what is crazy is the Meshan Reprisal Coalition, or the lack thereof. I put an incredible emphasis on the MRC because they are a core part of Arma Armatura that isn't mentioned. There is not a single mention of the MRC anywhere on the Armatura Mod page. There is no mention of the MRC being a faction, having their own start, or that you need an Exaron to actually play said campaign. It's not like it's a secret unlockable or anything, it's just never mentioned. And for being the objectively best way to experience the mod, I am bamboozled that it's not emphasized. Shoi, if you're not going to promote the MRC, then so help me Lud, I will do it myself. When it comes to the overall balance of Arma Armatura, I'm actually quite impressed. No single piece of their equipment feels overpowered. Strong maybe, but all within reason. If anything, my main concern is that certain pieces are tragically underpowered, especially when they are some of the coolest pieces of equipment I've ever seen, such as the counter shield for the Valkazard, one of the optional chest pieces. That blue bar fills way too slowly for such an underwhelming attack, especially when you need to sacrifice shield coverage, which is precious on cataphracts. They might look invincible when they're dodging between shots and gliding over ships, but let me tell you, cataphracts, like children, yearn for the mines. The most tragic of weapons being the boost knuckle. If it doesn't hit anything or you fail to catch it, you lose the boost knuckle, which happens incredibly often. It's a weapon that's as fun as it is frustrating, and it's very fun. Now, this will be getting updated in the near future, but if you do play the current version, try to resist zooming in and out like a crazy person. Now, what is crazy is the Meshan Reprisal Coalition, or the lack thereof. I put an incredible emphasis on the MRC because they are a core part of Arma Armatura that isn't mentioned. There is not a single mention of the MRC anywhere on the Armatura Mod page. There is no mention of the MRC being a faction, having their own start, or that you need an Exaron to actually play said campaign. It's not like it's a secret unlockable or anything, it's just never mentioned. And for being the objectively best way to experience the mod, I am bamboozled that it's not emphasized. Shoi, if you're not going to promote the MRC, then so help me Lud, I will do it myself. And lastly, the ships have incredibly low weight. What I mean is their spawn or distribution weight in markets is abysmal. It actually takes a great deal of time to assemble an Armatura fleet, because their equipment barely spawns. Due to new Meshan being independent, other ship mods you have installed can further reduce Armatura ship availability. This was emphasized in my playthrough by one ship in particular, the Baseline. I never saw this ship, and it's not like it's supposed to be rare. It's an aggressively average carrier, but I suppose it is unique because it doesn't exist, and I eventually resorted to otherworldly conjuration to acquire one, because it felt like trying to complete a Pokedex catching every legendary Pokemon known to mankind, and yet, in all the adventures, there was never a fucking Diglett! But when it comes to doing things right, there's Dawn. Nobody represents the blend of faith, freedom, and capitalism like Dawn given to God. One of the most charming characters in Starsector, Dawn has a variety of dialogue to get a glimpse into her background, faith, and view on the sector. Under normal circumstances, she starts as a low-level military contact of Armatura and is your typical connection to Serapha. Once connected to Serapha, however, Dawn may be recruited to your fleet. Since the Fa connection happens at the beginning of the MRC scenario, Dawn can be recruited almost immediately, which I do recommend, because Dawn is an ace pilot and prefers to be behind the controls of whatever craft she's given, which syncs up perfectly with cataphracts and other small vessels. Once hired and assigned to a ship, she's ready for combat.
Dawn reporting. All green here.
Being implemented in October 2023, Dawn is the first voiced character in Starsector, having quite the selection of voice lines when deployed into combat.
This beauty ain't pretty, but she fights like a cornered rat.
The voice lines are incredibly charming, but that's not even what makes Dawn one of the best characters in Starsector, because she's not just a character, not just a captain, but a companion, and will actually accompany you on your adventures throughout the sector, whether that's taking a closer look at a cryo sleeper or how she always hoped to attend the Galadia Academy, but never did, as in her own words, life's got a way of pulling you back to Jangala. Within the sector, Dawn has a history, a personality, and a presence. It feels great to have a companion adventuring around and having these special interactions based on what you run into. Above all else, however, is her faith, as Dawn is adamant about her beliefs and her desire to visit the shrines of the Pilgrim's Path. Cross-mod interactions are always a treat, and something Armatura has plenty of. But what I haven't seen much of is integration into the vanilla missions, something Dawn is able to do if it means she gets to go planetside and visit all the shrines with you. Once you've taken Dawn to visit the shrines, it's time to eradicate the evil of this sector. Now, if you don't want spoilers or know what I'm referring to when I say
Space demons.
you'll probably want to skip this section, as we're heading to where the void stares back. But, just as an old legend used to say,
to fight the abyss, one must know it.
so too does Dawn deliver the hardest line ever heard in Starsector.
An abomination. Demons from hell itself are before us. We pray to Providence to pass this test which has been given unto our unworthy selves.
Dawn, a sister of battle, pious and unrelenting, stands firm in her conviction to rid the sector of such evil. That being said, one must come to terms with that witnessed in the abyss. Abominations cloaked in shadow, for the real test of a captain's resolve comes after. Do you commit the unthinkable? Do you weaponize forbidden power? Do you embrace demonic energy? Do you cross the line of no return? Since we've been in a similar situation before, I'd say to choose your words carefully, or let Lud take the wheel, for our beloved Dawn will have no part in such blasphemy. What I can say is for the past several months playing this mod, nothing could replace the feeling of having a few drinks, slaying the demons of this sector, side by side with Dawn.
All right, Lord. I'm flying stupid again. You better be watching.
Arma Armatura has come an incredible way as a mod, and will likely look quite different in the future. For Shoi is relentless in his pursuit to make the ultimate mecha mod, because just when I thought I had seen everything, the Cabbage Man released an update. While he did mention there would be an update, he didn't quite convey how big of an update this was. And scrolling through the patch notes, I felt my eye begin to twitch, because this is a big update. And for my own sanity, we'll cover the highlights. Like the Ashura, a new cataphract being added to the ranks of Armatura. Unique as it is the first 4-armed mecha, wielding 2 swords, a gun, and a throwable hammer. The throwable hammer is especially enjoyable, being able to bounce between targets and set up juicy combos. While other cataphracts like the Aleste series have you covered for energy swords, it's nice to have some traditional melee weaponry. Certainly a less traditional vehicle, the Bach Raid mobile armor received a significant mechanic update. Not only has it gotten buffed to the point of having double the hard points and additional built-in subsystems, but the Bach Raid can now be refitted to any cataphract. This doesn't seem to have any restriction on it, so if you're wondering...
Wait, does that mean I can equip it to what I think I can?
Yes it does.
Drive me closer, man. I want to hit them with my sword.
And in traditional Bach Raid fashion, you may purge the armor should you want to get jiggy with it. Speaking of cataphracts, the Valkhazard is now truly one of a kind as intended by lore, so you won't be able to acquire 2 with the MRC start. Luckily, a critical bug was fixed, which now allows the acquisition of the Valken 3 from Serapha. While not at the insane power levels of the original, the Valken 3 is Armatura's best mecha foot forward in recreating the Valkhazard of old, and a very capable cataphract in its own right. Taking a look at the fine print, a massive rewrite of the dialogue was done. Approximately 130 pages worth, condensing information to be more concise and clear to the player. In other areas, more flavor and context have been added to the Gamlen system, including additional cross-mod interactions. Receiving the biggest update in terms of interactions is, of course, Dawn. Not only has her dialogue been overhauled, she's been given new interaction events, like having a round of drinks with officers from your fleet. Other improvements include a reworked ATAC track, several portrait changes, and new secrets to discover, like these ships. Or this guy. Actually, he's kind of a big deal. Meanwhile, there's super sus Sarah spinning around in her chair like,
I've been expecting you.
Shoi, being a Starsector modder, has now overhauled his missions with even better visuals, mechanics, and classy intros. As part of the overhauled mechanics and design, the missions have been made significantly more difficult, with some of the biggest changes in the update being to the Virginia. Did I mention, to acquire it, you'll now have to defeat it in battle. With the new mecha, mission enhancements, and other great additions of the latest update, I'm convinced Armatura has a bright future. Something I've come to appreciate about Arma Armatura after playing it for months now is the fact that there's a lot of Starsector mods that seek to increase the sense of scale by increasing the size of the ships, while Arma Armatura goes in the opposite direction, which you'd think would be counterintuitive, and yet by focusing on the smaller elements, it makes the game feel bigger. I've admittedly been captivated by the fact that this mod completely changed how I play Starsector. In battle, instead of zooming out, I'm zooming in. Some of the most satisfying gameplay being weaving between the enemy fleet, feeling like an ace cataphract pilot, and doing so with wingmates at your side makes you feel like you're taking on something bigger than any of you could amount to individually. It's that kind of unique experience that you don't get very often in games, the kind that stay with you for a lifetime. Much like Skyrim, a game technically released the same year as Starsector or Starfarer, mods give us new experiences so we can fall in love with our favorite games all over again. There's something about modding decade-old games that hits different. And it's not just the epic dragon battle. It's the raindrops, the trees swaying, or some cataphracts changing stances when within 2,000 units of the enemy. It's the little things. There's so many things I didn't consciously realize while playing Armatura initially, but subconsciously felt, man, this is good. The entire mod just oozes style and soul like you wouldn't believe. And given that, it's incredibly well integrated into vanilla Starsector, fully embracing the Ludic influence given the system location, and the characters feeling like they belong in the core worlds. And while you might argue that old school anime doesn't belong in Starsector, Shoi makes it feel like it does, seamlessly integrating many of his favorite series into a cohesive mod. While Shoi's library of shoot-'em-up games vastly eclipses my own, we bonded over a shared ideology. Because I admit, I'm biased, I really like mechs, I always have. With the name IroncladLion coming from when I first played Hawken. Is it why I have the Ares, one of the largest mechs in the MechWarrior series? No, it's why I have all 4 of them. I don't think you understand. And yes, I already backed Diesel Knights. Because passion. Something Shoi and his team have an abundance of. But it's not just sugar and spice that makes everything nice. Shoi's the most humble mod creator I've ever met, respecting the cornerstone of player freedom. There's not many mod authors who would put such emphasis on compatibility, fewer who would maintain 2 portrait packs for their own mod. Armatura will also be integrated with LunaLib, offering mod options so players may enjoy their ideal Armatura experience. There's really only a few mods that have made me fall in love with Starsector all over again. And it's Armatura that redefines what I think the peak of Starsector modding looks like. Oh no! Because sometimes it's the little things, and that's what Armatura does best. I absolutely love it. It's incredibly fun, and one of the best mods for Starsector. So do me a favor, go download Arma Armatura on the Starsector forum, and consider supporting development on Ko-fi. Over 600 giggy-biggies and many months in the making. Thank you patrons of the Iron Trading Company, who generously fund the channel and allow me to create these videos. As always, featured artists and additional credits are linked below. For the dedicated viewers watching till the end, cheers my friends. Here's to an excellent time playing and modding your favorite games. Consider subscribing to the channel, and have a great day. I'm IroncladLion, and thanks for watching.
I've got a bottle of the good stuff waiting in my locker for when we return. Let's hope we can crack it open tonight.